Hello and welcome back to The Art of Parenting. This is your host, Jeanne-Marie Pennell, and today I'm with Joey Odom, who are going to talk about our relationship with our phones, which I'm very, very interested in knowing your perspective. Kind of been my little battle, my own phone and phones of other people and all of that. So I'm interested to learn your perspective and also what you have done about it, which is what we're going to be talking about. So welcome, Joey. Thank you for making the time to be here with me today.
Thank you, Jean-Marie. It's so good to be with you. Really excited. I was gonna try a greeting in French, and I just don't have the confidence for it. I was thinking about it, and I just thought I can't quite do it yet. Duolingo has not yet gotten me there.
Well, you did well when we were offline, so
I did okay.
fine. Yeah.
You're very generous.
Okay, so I always like to get started on these interviews with asking my guests how they define the art of parenting. So, what would be your definition?
I will tell you, for purposes of this discussion, I will say the art of parenting is exactly what you just said. It is not a science. It is, to me, it is the art and the willingness to wade into the gray waters of nuance and the willingness to be open to being corrected and falling flat on your face and getting back up again and giving yourself grace and forgiving yourself and giving it the very best you can every single day.
Love that. And it's so true. I went into parenting, many years ago. My eldest is 28, saying I will do my very best. And no matter what I do, they'll tell me I did it all wrong. So we just got to go for it, right?
And that's so true. And it really is so true. And what's funny about it is one thing I've learned so much, my kids are 16 and 14, is that I think you can get so many things wrong and you can make up for all of them with your full undivided presence. And I think that you can get so many things right and you can kind of blow it all for a lack of your undivided presence. So I've just been trying that lately. It's just being present and believing that that's going to make up for a multitude of shortcomings.
Beautiful. Yes, presence is very, very important. Intentional presence for sure. So, Joey, before we get started, I would love if you could introduce yourselves to our listeners, our viewers, a little bit about your background and how you came to do the work that you're doing today.
Yeah, would love to. And I'll take you back. I'll start with the story. This is probably the best way to encapsulate it. So my son, Harrison, who is now 16 years old, when he was 5 years old, he was playing his very first soccer season. And for anybody who has been involved with youth sports, you kind of know that the most successful players, especially in soccer, are really aggressive kids, right? These kids who are, darting for the ball and throwing elbows. And my sweet little Harrison was just not one of those kids. So as a result, he was also not the most successful soccer player playing in his first season. So in this particular season, everybody had scored a goal on the team except for Harrison. And so this one particular Saturday afternoon that we thought was going to be normal turned out to be pretty special. And it happened about midway through the game when Harrison reared back his little leg and he kicked the soccer ball. And in this moment, it kind of plays in your head almost like a slow motion scene in a movie, a very dramatic scene as the ball glides over the grass into the back of the net for Harrison's very first soccer goal. And these sweet parents who were on the sidelines, they all knew what had just happened, that the kid who had not yet scored a goal had scored his first goal. So they went crazy. His coach ran out on the field, lifted him up, and it was this amazing moment. And in between this moment of the ball hitting the back of the net and his coach picking him up, Harrison turned to the sidelines to do what I think a lot of 5-year-old boys would do. And that's to share the moment with me, to share the moment with dad, for him to see the pride on my face and the smile on my face and have this magical moment together. And it really was magical, except for one thing. And that's that I missed all of that scene, that I missed his soccer goal, that I missed him looking over at me. I missed every bit of what I just described. And it's because I was looking down. I was looking down at my phone. And I have no idea what it was. It could have been an important work email. It could have been a group text. I have no idea what it was, but I do know that when he turned over to see the smile on my face, he only saw the top of my head. So that was a moment. I think I have the words for it now, Jean-Marie. I think the words I have now are, my relationship with my phone was getting in the way of my most important relationships. But the only words I had for it then was something's wrong, that I
Mm,
knew that something just felt wrong. I didn't need a book full of statistics. I didn't need all the statistics to tell me all the damage that our phones are doing. I just had this feeling that said, that hurts.
yeah.
So that was the real seminal moment. That was for me what was. It wasn't the first, unfortunately. It wasn't the last time that I would that my relationship with my phone would get in the way with my relationships with others. But that was the one where I said, okay, something doesn't feel right. So a couple years later, my now business partner and friend at that time, Heath Wilson, he shot me a text and he said, hey, let's sit down and talk about this, because he knew I struggled with my phone, distraction of my phone. He struggled with it as well. And he basically said, what if we could change that for our families? And what if we changed it for our families, what if we could change it for a lot of other families as well? So that began the journey of this company that we have now that's called RO, which helps people reclaim their time and their moments and their lives back from technology.
Beautiful. And such an important service for families.
Mm,
As you were, describing and telling me that story, which I had read and knew, but it's such an important like moment, right? Pivotal moment in your parenting,
mm,
in your humanness, right? I realized that you are part of that generation that grew up with phones too, right?
yeah.
Because I'm an older parent. I didn't have that distraction, right? I was a soccer mom too and went to the games and, you know, wasn't, I didn't have the most aggressive children and, I was there talking with other people, watching the game.
Mm,
I didn't have that distraction. And I realized today that the, you know, younger generation of parents have that distraction. And
yeah.
then what do you do about it? And
Mm.
do you pass it on to your children and so forth? So,
And you bring up something so interesting, and I would guess, even though you didn't have a phone when your kids were young, was it parenting? I'll just ask you the question. I don't want to presume too much. Parenting was still hard, right?
oh,
Like
yeah. Oh,
it
yeah.
so here we are now. It's almost like, and I don't know, there's got to be a better analogy for this, but it's almost like someone saying, I'm going to go run a marathon, a 26-mile marathon. That is an amazing physical achievement to do. That is such a difficult thing to do. And so that's almost like the normal course of parenting is you got to run a marathon. It's so hard to do. And then right as you're at the starting line, someone says, hey, I want you to carry this boulder now.
Exactly.
Right. That is
Exactly.
almost impossible. So here you were doing such a difficult task without carrying the boulder. And now you think about parents all today, it is almost impossible. We're defying logic or even reality by thinking, hey, I can do a super effective job of being this really present, intentional parent while we're carrying this thing while we're constantly carrying this thing that is only serving, not only, there's some good things on it, but it is largely serving to distract us from that very difficult task we need to do, which is being a
Yeah.
parent.
Yeah. Especially, I will say, in the critical years of early childhood when
Huh.
our children need, like, that's how they are developing, brain circuitry and all this. Like, they need our presence. They need us looking at them,
Mm.
communicating with them, going, oh, ooh, making all of
Oh.
and I see parents of babies, of toddlers who are distracted by other things. I mean,
Mm.
with their phone and not, that like our children need that back and forth that we give them when we are present. So
Mm. That's so
very,
true.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you know a lot better than I do on the developmental side, but it's just from the earliest age, but even well prior to them being verbal, is just them being able to have that eye contact and form that connection at a very young age, and it's something that is I believe, and I really do believe this. I think this is such a hopeful opportunity when it comes to our phones. It's easy to get really bogged down and really negative. I think this is such an amazing opportunity. If people are listening who are young parents or parents of kids who are a little bit older or not yet parents, wherever you are, I still think that today is the day where you can begin to reverse this tide, because we now have I just had a feeling 11 years ago, feeling that something was wrong. We now have the data. Jonathan Haidt wrote the most beautiful, brilliant book called The Anxious Generation that lays out a case for us. And so we could look at that and feel bogged down by it, or we could say, oh, this is great. Like I now know all the damage this is doing, which helps you know what battle to fight and how to fight the battle and what to do about it. And what a cool opportunity we have right now, 17 years into the smartphone experiment, to really get this right. So I am incredibly hopeful. And I'm, as the parent of teenage kids, I'm very hopeful. And I can't imagine how hopeful it must be to think about parents who have kids even much younger than that.
Yeah. I'm glad that you're so positive and optimistic. I like that, because to be honest, I get a little worried and scared for the generation kind of coming online. I'm also a birth doula, and so I see new families being created all the time, and I just so hope that we can kind of redefine this relationship, like you say, this relationship we have with our phone.
Yeah.
I'd love if you could talk a little bit more about that. It's like, why do you even call it a relationship? Like it's an inanimate object. Like it's just a tool. Like why relationship? That to me sounds really strong.
Doesn't that sound weird?
It does. Yeah.
And the reason why it sounds weird is because it is that we as adults, we actually don't really have relationships with objects, right? We use objects for the most part as tools. So I think about my lawnmower as an example. I see my lawnmower once a week for about 9 months out of the year. I'm not like you. I don't get 12 months of beautiful weather like you do in San Diego. But I see it about once a week, 12 months out of the year. I don't have a relationship, or 9 months out of the year. I don't have a relationship with my lawnmower. Right? When a conversation gets boring, I don't go sneak in a quick mow. Right? so it's or maybe a car, maybe people are, but really as adults, we don't have relationships with objects. But humans, it is very normal for some humans to have relationships with objects. And those humans are called infants and toddlers. And what are the objects that they have relationships with? They have them with pacifiers and with teddy bears and with blankies. And there's a term for that thing. And it's a very, very healthy part of child development, these transitional objects. They're also called comfort objects. And so they serve a really helpful purpose. You know all this, is that these are objects that children cling to in the absence of their real security, in the absence of their relationship. So mom and dad leave the room, so they hold on to the blankie. That gives them comfort. And so what that does over time, they learn that, okay, mom and dad have left. I cling to this blanket. Wait a second. I don't actually need this anymore. I don't need this blanket anymore. But it transitioned them from this like heavy amount of dependence into a level of independence. This is a really, really beautiful thing. But something interesting with our phones has happened, is that we have, as adults, begun to cling to an object like a child clings to an object. And instead of, whereas children will cling to an object in the absence of relationship, in the absence of their parents, we're clinging to these objects in the presence of our most important relationships. We're hanging out, we're looking at our phones at the dinner table with our families. We're doing it on date nights with our spouses. We're looking at our phones in the middle of conversation, phone snubbing the people around us. And so this has reduced us back to childhood. And the reason I say relationship is because there are three real defining characteristics of a relationship, and that's proximity, varying levels of proximity, interaction, and dependence. So when we develop a relationship with somebody, it generally begins out of proximity. This is why we're friends with our kids' parents, right? We're friends with them because we're just around them a lot. And when you're around somebody more, you begin to interact with them more. And as you interact with somebody more, then you become more dependent on them. And I don't mean toxic dependence. I mean good dependence. Like someone's there for you when you're having a bad day, or someone can help you pick up your kids from soccer if you're running late. These are good levels of dependence. And the same thing has happened with our phones. And the defining characteristic of our relationships with phones is our constant proximity to them. In fact, the statistics prove this out, that 91% of us have our phones with us 24 hours a day, that we don't have to move our feet to reach our phones, and we'll exclude maybe showering for some of us from the discussion, right? So 91% of us have our phones with us all the time. And as a result, we are constantly interacting with these phones. And the main reason we're constantly interacting with them is because they're super interesting and they have a wealth of information and they do very, very cool things. So this is not a demonization at all of phones. It's just, I know when I'm with my phone, I'm going to find some reason to look at it. And they even say that, studies are showing even the presence of our phones equals interaction with them. So if you and I, Jean-Marie, were at coffee, we would be sitting there. And if my phone were on the table, it would be equal to me interacting with it because I'm anticipating things coming from it, or I'm wondering what's happening in there, just the mere presence of it. So it has to be moved out of sight. And on the in the interaction level, because we're with them, think exactly how to say this right. The only reason I'm using it so much is because it's with me all the time. And so 89% of our smartphone usage is self-initiated, that it's me. It's not the inbound notification. It's me saying, what's the weather? Again, I'm going to pick on San Diego again. You all never have to check the weather. It's always 75 degrees and perfect. You all know that. So do you even have the weather app in San Diego, by the way?
I do. And unfortunately, it's fire season right now. So we do have to be careful. But no, yeah. I still watch it once in a while.
Always beautiful. So we are the ones initiating that. And then what happens is, because they're with us all the time, because we're always interacting with them, then we grow a level of dependence. And again, in not always bad ways. But what can happen in this dependence, this is where it's so insidious, is that we grow these levels of false dependence on our phones.
Right.
Is that we begin to believe that we need them more than we do.
Yeah.
And so one example, and this is the best example, we all know the damage that looking at our phones before bed does, or looking at them right when we wake up, yet we all have them in our rooms because they serve as our alarm clock. Despite all the damage they're doing to our sleep and our REM cycles and all that kind of circadian rhythms, we still have them with us because they're our alarm clocks. Well, that's a false dependence on our phones. We could and should go buy third-party alarm clocks that will wake us up so that we don't have to have our phones in our rooms.
Yes.
And because we built these sense of false dependencies on our phone, then what does it do? Well, it goes back to proximity. Then we feel like we have to have them with us all the time. So proximity leads to interaction, leads to dependence. We call this the PID loop. We're just in this loop, this proximity, interaction, dependence. But, and this is the most obvious statement of the day, if we could break that level of constant proximity, then we will use them less. We will grow less dependent on them. And when we feel less dependent on them, then we'll be around them less, and then we'll interact with them less. And so it all begins with that first domino, which is the constant proximity that they are to us. And again, easier said than done. That's like saying if you exercise more, then you'll be more healthy. I understand that. It's still hard to exercise more, right?
Right.
So that is the challenge. But if we can look at it from the perspective of this is a relationship, and not just to get them away from us, but because we recognize that relationship has gotten in the way of our most important relationships. And if we can view it from that gives us a very compelling why to do something about it. And then we know, okay, well, let's begin to break that cycle of proximity with our phones.
Right. And that's where RO comes in. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So I'd love if you could share a little bit more about what you've created to help us kind of change that relationship, right? To have a better relationship, I feel, with our phone. I mean, I know I take, when you were saying proximity, like it's here right now, but I usually put it in another room when I'm working. The most part, when I sleep, I try to have it in another room on airplane mode. But it's true, like I was telling you earlier, I'm a birth doula, so I'm on call sometimes and it has to be there. And it kind of annoys me, but it's like, it's okay. This is part of the work. But yeah, so I realize, this whole idea of relationship, and sometimes, I don't know, you can be wasting time, because sometimes you really do waste time on your phone if you're scrolling one of the social media apps or such. And every once in a while, I delete all of those off my phone. I'm like, okay, I'm done with you. Like, go away, right? Yeah. Just like interacting with a relationship. So it's interesting. Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're exactly right. I mean, and we all feel this, and this is where maybe as just before I go into that as a little bit of a prelude for somebody as parents, there's a lot of shame that can be associated when it comes to our phones or feeling like we're falling short. I would just encourage everybody to recognize we're all fighting this battle.
We
And I would
are.
love for you to give yourself grace. And if you've fallen flat on your face, don't give up. Don't believe that like, oh, I'm never going to conquer this thing. I believe that this is such a worthwhile battle for all of us to continue to fight. So please
Definitely.
remove any shame or condemnation you feel in yourself. And I love, seeing you affirm that and shake your and nod your head because yeah, this is
Mm,
universal. And this is something that a lot of very smart, wealthy people are vying for our attention when it comes to our phones. And of course it's going to be a hard battle, but it's worthwhile. I think I want to
right.
say that. And for RO, and this is not a commercial for our business in any way. This is a tool that we have built. I believe it's the best tool in the world. And I know that because of all the people I speak with, the tens of thousands of people who are using it, but also for my own personal experience is that I need a trusted system to help me put my phone down so that I can focus on more important things. So RO is what RO at its core does is RO quantifies the time that you are physically distant from your phone.
Okay.
And that's different from the time you're on your phone. It's not like it's 24 hours minus the time you're on your phone. It is the time that you are intentionally, and you said, you corrected me early in the conversation. I really loved it. It stood out when I said presence, and you said intentional presence,
Yes.
which is so true. Your physical body being there is not all that matters. Your
Right.
heart and soul and your mind and everything there. That's what I believe. That's what probably you were alluding to there.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes. Yes.
So
Definitely.
so RO, as you go in, the RO is an app that you go in, you tap a button on the app, you flip your phone, and then that begins to quantify the amount of time that you are physically away from your phone.
Okay.
And and so what we can do with that, so RO is the reminder. We through the app remind you, hey, is it about time for some time away from your phone? Or when you're after you've been away from your phone, it'll help you quantify like on we talked on Duolingo, which I'm trying to learn French on. They've done a great job of gamifying language learning. And so you build up streaks of your daily practices. So for RO, the same thing, you're building up daily streaks of being away from your phone. And this in reclaiming time from your phone, it has to be, I believe, a daily thing that you do. So
Definitely.
reclaiming daily time or building up like, or, connecting your ring of time away from your phone. We have a recommendation, Jean-Marie, which is that people should spend 2 hours a day physically distant from their phones. And the reason why we say 2 hours, that is a magic number, is because if you do that, just spend 2 hours physically distant from your phone, you have reclaimed 1 month in your year. And it
Wow.
just takes 2 hours a day. That's 1 month. You can have a 13-month year. How cool is that? Right. I mean, here I am with my kids, my son Harrison, who's 16. I know what the stats say. The stats say that 90% of the time that I will ever spend with him will happen by the time he's 18 years old.
Yeah.
That 75% of the time that I will spend, any of us spend with our kids, happens by the time they are 12 years old. So I would love nothing more than a 13-month year right now. And we can get that. We can reclaim that time, and it's 2 hours a day. So what RO does, RO is a trusted system that helps remind you to spend time away from your phone and then gamifies the experience of you being away from your phone and rewards you through all the stuff the social media companies are using to keep us on our phone. We use to get you off your phone so you can celebrate that time and really not just for the sake of spending time away from your phone. There's nothing motivational about that, but for the life that happens on the other side of it, for that
Right.
conversation with your daughter, for that
Right.
time on a date night with your partner, for that time watching them, maybe even watching a movie, which I know it's not trading screen for screen, but you can have an experience with someone in your family, watch a family movie without a second screen. And we all know when those moments happen and it's completely uninterrupted, we know how beautiful and meaningful those moments can be.
Yeah. So how does this differ from because now I think phones seem to be pretty, intentional about helping us have downtime and all this. I
Yeah.
mean, I have an iPhone. It has, things on it for to, shut me off,
Yeah.
things that I set up, but I know I can just say forget it or ignore or
Yeah.
whatever, right? So it's
Yeah,
not
sure.
maybe so what is the added plus of what you've created?
It really is a level up from that. So I'll take an example of one tool that Apple has, which is our daily screen time. So you get a
Right.
Sunday screen time report that tells you how much time you've been on your phone. The problem with different approaches like that is one, it actually, I believe, communicates kind of a bad message when it comes to our screen time. And that message is that all screen time is bad. If I'm on
Right.
my phone for 5 hours and be like, holy crap, I was on my phone for 5 hours. Well, wait a second. Let's dig into the details. The detail says an hour of that was me on Waze navigating through, using that app on my phone. That could have been me using a meditation app or a spiritual app or, for people of faith, like a Bible app. Like those are good things that happened on your phone, or it's work. I'm doing my email. So the type of metrics that are being reported back to us, I actually don't believe are actionable metrics. And
Okay.
then this has, and there are other tools that do not disturb in the downtime, and that's great. A lot of those, what they can do is they can rely very often on you exercising your own willpower to follow through on them, which I totally get. And even RO, obviously you have to go in and intentionally tap that, but it is that trusted system that's constantly reminding you of your intentions, constantly reminding you, and then making you feel good about those intentions, those things that you've done. And then you can do it in group, in accountability with other people around you. So the RO app also has circles where you can see, effectively a leaderboard within your family of who's spending time away from their phones. You can set up time with your other friends if you have an accountability group or something like that. So it allows you to do it with others. And this is where it starts getting into what Jonathan Haidt refers to as a collective action, is
Hmm.
that if you're trying to do something exclusively on your own, it's really hard. But when you're doing it with others and it becomes kind of the norm within that group, it becomes so much easier. So whether that's with your family or whether that's with a group of friends, knowing you're doing, and we all know this from our shared experience, it's a lot easier to run or walk every day if you have a running or walking group, right? So
Exactly.
doing
Yeah.
it with others. So RO taps into all of those, all of that, the science around habit formation, and then the power of community and groups, and the power of kind of the motivational tools, like again, like the social media apps are using to keep us on our phones. We're using those to hopefully reharness those to get us off of our phones.
Right. And I'm not mistaken, there's also kind of a physical component to your what you've created, right?
There is. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is a real level up, and this is where it gets fun, and I need this in my home. This is the RO box. We created a place that holds your phone, that when you put your phone in the RO box, it will automatically connect to the app, and it will automatically begin to quantify the amount of time you're away from your phone. So what this does is it provides a physicality to it where you see it. It's the visual cue that reminds you of your intentions. And on the side, it actually makes it charges your phone, so it becomes kind of your family's charging station as well. So the charging capabilities are almost the Trojan horse to get you to be physically distant from your phone. So it's something that lives in your home that reminds you of your intentions for yourself. It's the home base for your phones, and again, it automatically connects to the app so that it begins automatically quantifying the amount of time you're away from your phone.
I really am intrigued as a parent, as a dad. You mentioned you had a 16 and 14-year-old. What kind of digital device policies do you have in your home?
Yeah, they both have smartphones.
Okay.
They both got smartphones, and I guess going into eighth or ninth grade, depending on which child. So no, both of them in eighth grade.
Okay.
It has come with there's an overriding premise, and this is where it's a little bit hard for for children to get, because we all love to live in black and white. But there was an overall premise that said that human relationships come in front of phone relationships. That's one that we, just as a principle, we tried to embed within them. The second thing is we wanted them to get very used to having a physical place that is not their pocket. So we were fortunate. We had the RO box before they had phones, and so when they got phones, it just became the de facto place where their phone lives. We have a multi-level house, and so they don't take their phones upstairs. Their rooms are upstairs. They don't take their phones upstairs unless they ask, or, hey, Dad, I'm going to go shower. Can I listen to music? So that's an exception, but it's always a question. It's always an ask. Even if it's something that I will always say yes to. And that, by the way, over time, that is absolutely going to loosen that kind of thing. I don't want, if their relationship with the device is merely subject to my rules, then they're not building a relationship. They're not learning anything, right? So that those reins loosen over time. Neither of them have Safari on their phones. We're talking about a sophomore and freshman in high school. We know, again, I can't imagine if I were a sophomore in high school when I was there having unfettered access to the internet.
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah. They don't sleep with their phones, and their phones never sleep in their rooms. They don't sleep with them. That's another one. But the bigger thing for me is I recognize that this began with me. That our historical relationship as parents, like parenting with smartphones, what we've had, we call this the 3 M's, is that we as parents have modeled, and this is no shame, no disparagement, that we have modeled a bad relationship with our phones ourselves, that we're the ones that I'm the one that has it at the dinner table, or I'm the one when my daughter's trying to talk to me, I look at my phone. So we model a bad relationship with our phones. And then someday we give our kids a phone, and what do? They mimic what we've modeled. They just do, more is caught than taught. We all know that. But then we do something crazy with this third M, Jean-Marie. We do something that's crazy, is that we have the audacity to get mad at our kids for mimicking what we modeled to them, right? So this is on us. But what if instead we modeled a great relationship with our phones before our kids got phones? What if we were the ones that modeled a great one, and then they saw what was normal? Then they knew, oh yeah, phones don't belong at the dinner table. I should tell a funny story. Like my son went on a date last night with a girl, and one of the very first things that she said, and I sure hope she doesn't listen to this because I'm just totally putting her on blast here, is that she said, I said, hey, how'd it go? He said, pretty good. She looked at her phone a little bit during dinner. It was so notable to him that she would look at her phone. And why is that? Because what's normal in our home is that when we're breaking bread together, we're locked in with each other, and we're not perfect. Believe me, we're far from perfect, but it begins to create a normal world for them. So it was notable to him that she was on her phone during dinner. So I believe that with all the rules we can place on our kids, if we've not modeled it well, we're going to have a hard time implementing it. That's just going to be a really, really difficult thing to do. So again, I believe, I said earlier, this is a good battle worth fighting. I believe that we should start with ourselves, that we should always start with ourselves. We call this start, stop. Always start with yourself. Don't blame your spouse. Don't blame your kids. Mandate it on yourself first. I'm going to model this well. Let's start with ourselves, and let's stop at nothing. Start and stop. Start with yourself and stop at nothing to get it right. And if you fail, that's fine, but get up the next day and keep working on it. This is a battle worth fighting. So for all the rules, again, I'll say it one more time. For all the rules we could place on our kids, if we're not modeling this well, that's just going to fall flat, I believe.
Yeah. And it's so true what you say about modeling. And again, I'll take it back to early childhood, right? Where I think that when we become parents, this is our opportunity to be extremely aware of what that relationship is with our phone, and what we're showing even this infant, right? Because if we don't learn to model what we want for them later, what are they going to do? At one point, they're going to take it from our hands, because we're so involved with this thing. They think, oh my God, this must be amazing. Let me have it. Right.
Wow. You're so right.
And then we get into, this horrible, excuse my language, but it's horrible trend of handing over our phones to children or iPads, or when I see young children in strollers on an iPad or on a phone, I'm like, what are you doing, people? Like,
I know. No, it's almost like we're training it in them. We're telling. I know.
But like you said, it starts with us. That's my message to new parents. It's like, be so self-conscious and so aware of what you are doing in the presence of your young child, right? Because it's going to set them up for for that future
That's
relationship.
so right.
Yeah.
I know.
One thing I'm intrigued and want your take on this. I've interviewed other people, around this issue of screens, of digital devices and all this. And like you say, it's going to take a group of people. We can't do it as individuals. Like, it's really hard. They've been studying our brain to make us addicted to these devices. Do you see in the near future any kind of regulations that might happen, just like we have in the food industry, like we have in the tobacco industry, alcohol industry? Like, do you think that in the foreseeable future, there's going to be like just health awareness, right? I mean, I think we know that it's not healthy for all of us, and yet there's nothing kind of.
Yeah. I think it is absolutely inevitable. I really do. I mean, I think we have a bunch, and this is, by the way, this is not a partisan issue either, which is great.
No.
Senators Blumenthal, who's a Democrat, and Senator Blackburn, who's a Republican. Those two have come together on, to protect children from the dangers of social media and big tech. So I'm very heartened to see that. What I maybe am not quite as hopeful on is necessarily the effects of that. Is that we have taken great steps in government to protect kids from junk food and bad food and all that kind of stuff, and childhood obesity is off the charts, right? So but you think about smoking as an example. I believe that smoking, I think the Surgeon General's warning was pretty helpful for that. But what really turned the tide when it came to smoking and in curbing childhood smoking was us realizing as parents that our secondhand smoke was harming our kids. Right. And so what's interesting about that is as they've tracked smoking in adults, from when they begin tracking smoking in adults to today, smoking in adults is down somewhere in the neighborhood of 72%. As the smoking in adults is down 72%. They also began tracking smoking in kids from when they began tracking that to today. And I'll let you guess what percentage decrease that is in kids. 72%, both of them. So what does that tell us? Is that exactly what we just said? It underscores that point, is our kids are going to mimic what we model. And so when parents realized secondhand smoke hurt their kids, they said, I don't want to hurt. I'm hurting myself. That's one thing, but I don't want to hurt my kids. So I'm going to stop smoking. And then childhood smoking went down in the same degree. So I believe I think government should absolutely step in, because we know the damage it's doing. But we also know as parents, we just don't have time to wait for Washington to do it for us.
Right. No, definitely. But I was just intrigued because I've had other conversations with experts who say, like, we need help from.
Yes.
We can't do it alone, right? So
absolutely, has to come from all angles.
Yeah. What does RO stand for? I'm just intrigued.
Love that question. RO is a term from the Maori culture in New Zealand, and it means to notice. It means to turn towards, to take heed, and it's such a beautiful it's a beautiful culture, and it's a beautiful word, and that depth of meaning behind it, because that's our goal. Is we want people to be able to turn towards what's most important in their lives, to take heed of the most important things happening around them, to notice the relationships, to notice feelings inside of them, to notice the people around them, and so that's our goal. Our goal really is not. It's not to put down your phone. It's to notice and turn towards the more important things in your life.
And I would add to that, it's notice nature too. Like when you go on a walk, like don't even take your phone with you. Like just go.
It's amazing. You're so right. That is, I'm telling you, I have, as of late, especially, if I'm feeling stressed, or I'm feeling even this pull towards, like when you get stressed out, you maybe feel a pull towards like comfort food or something like that. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, a 20-minute walk outside without your phone, you just go through a quick mindfulness exercise and hit all 5 senses. It is a absolutely healing exercise for you to go do that and just notice the beauty of the world all around you. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this has been wonderful, Joey, and I'd love to circle back to kind of you as a parent. So you mentioned your eldest is 16. If you were to go back maybe 17 years ago when you were
Mm.
expecting this first child, what wise words would you tell yourself knowing all that you know today?
Oh, man. I love that question. I mean, it's there's just so much, and I think, and I don't want to be. There's so much because I do look back. I mean, I do look back and I just think of all the missteps. I think of that a lot, and I don't. I've heard there's a great line that says that guilt is a good indicator, but not a good motivator. So
Definitely.
I I I think that I do struggle probably at times with the things that I've messed up,
Mm.
candidly, but it's also probably an indicator there's something to do about it, but it's not necessarily motivators and go down a shame spiral. So I would say for me, it's this power of the power of being in the moment of, and I know it's so gosh darn overused, but that really is it. Is you just never notice, you just never know when that moment is going to pop up. When
Mm.
that moment of my daughter looking up at me and extending her hand and just wanting to hold my hand, and we have we have the choice in that moment to ignore it, to discard it, or to just embrace it. And so for me, I think about, I can even hear it as I'm saying it. I can hear sweet little Harrison's 3-year-old voice, the way he couldn't say his R's right. And I can
Mm.
hear my Gianna's high pitched voice, and I can hear her in my mind saying daddy when she's
Mm.
2 years old and she's 14 now. And I just want to be there for all those moments. And I think as I've gotten a little bit older and I've gotten a little bit wiser, and you're looking at a bunch of gray hair on my head right now that I continue to grow, and that's a bunch of wisdom that I've gained over the years, and it's just being fully present in those moments. My daughter Gianna and I yesterday took a drive to Nashville from Knoxville. We drove for 2.5 hours, and we listened to Taylor Swift the whole way, and we had lunch at a beautiful place together, and it was just one of those amazing common moments you could otherwise overlook and discard. So
Mm.
that's a very long answer to a great question, but I believe the answer would be the most basic thing is don't miss a moment. Set aside the distraction. It's going to feel monotonous at times. Yes, it's almost like when we think as parents we want to do these heroic things, but the most heroic thing is just not getting kind of dragged in and thinking the monotony. We should escape the monotony. It's just be
Yes.
there in
Yeah.
those moments. That was a long. Did
Beautiful.
I even give an answer there? That was just
It
like a
did.
just.
It did. It's embrace the being
Mm,
present, and like you say,
yeah.
the monotony of it. It
Mm,
is
yeah.
sometimes, but
Mm,
it's so important to be there even in those moments, right?
that's
That
so true.
our presence is what is the foundation of their well-being, of their confidence and self-esteem and all of that. So
Yeah,
being there for them is super important. So thank you for
absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any parting words that you would like to leave our listeners and viewers with today?
I think the biggest thing I would say is to hold fast to hope. This is hopeful. This is nothing but great news for us. We know exactly what to do. We know exactly the damage it can cause if not, which should inspire us to say, yeah, we can do better. When Harrison was born 16 years ago, I didn't really know the stats on this stuff, and now I do, and that's great news because I know what I can do about it. So I would encourage everybody to don't get don't get held back by shame. Don't get held back by desperation. Is make daily little deposits in yourself. Again, I think RO is the most effective tool out there to help you change your relationship with your phone. I'd encourage you to download the app. Just check RO in the App Store. Just go download the app and try it for a few days. But even if RO is not the one for you, the thing for you, still continue to go to whatever extreme you need to. Go find the thing that is helpful for you, and continue to strive here because it's worth it for yourself. It's worth it for your kids' futures, and it's worth it for all your relationships in your lives to strive well when it comes to this.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for making the time to be here with us today.
Thank you so much, El Marie.